Eddie Moon, welcome to the podcast, man. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you coming by. Like we just talked about, you just became a father recently, so I really appreciate you taking your time to do this. I know it's a lot of things to look after when you become a dad.
No, it's I need this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good to hear. Can you briefly, for the people who might not know who you are, introduce yourself and what you do?
Yeah, hi, my name's Eddie Moon. I primarily create content on YouTube, specifically about cryptocurrency and finance. But I also previously done owned a screen printing business for about 10 years, done that. I also direct a dance team. And I also actually run actually a streamer as well. I play Pokemon cards. So I do all sorts of things. And just by nature, I love trying new things and yeah, mostly business related.
Okay, really quickly, I am super sorry to interrupt this episode with Eddie Moon. I know I say this every episode, but I really am sorry to interrupt. But there's just one thing that I need to humbly ask you. If you have not already, could you please consider subscribing to the channel? It helps out so much more than you know. And in return, I promise to keep working hard on delivering these episodes. I try to make sure that these episodes are as valuable as possible for you to listen to, so that when you watch them, after you've listened to them, you will leave having learned something or feel a bit smarter about whatever area that or whatever topic we talk about on the podcast. So if that sounds interesting to you, please subscribe. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of the episode. Nice. I didn't know you were into Pokemon, man.
Yeah, it's yeah, not a lot of people do. Yeah,
Yeah. Did you
yeah.
become into it? Like, have you always been into it, or did you become into it like recently, a few years ago, when it started to really boom among
August of
influencers?
2022 is kind of when I got into it. My friend, he was into it. He kind of introduced me to it again. I grew up with it, and then I saw a lot of opportunity in that space. And so, in November of 2022, launched a streaming kind of Pokemon business. And since starting, we're almost at like a 400K in revenue since then. So it's
Wow.
been quite the run. Yeah.
You said streaming business?
Yes. Yeah.
So what do you stream? Do you stream people playing with the cards or?
No, so basically what I do is there's a rip and ship model. Basically, I'm on stream. I have products in the store. Say you buy something from me, I'll rip that pack right in front of you and show you what you got, and then I'll ship it to you.
Ah,
Yeah.
interesting. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I uh I I was Pokemon was a religion to me when I was really young. I used to have one of the biggest collections in Denmark. And
No
so
way.
I recently, I think 3 or 4 years ago, actually, I decided to sell my whole collection. So that was really my first entrepreneurial endeavor, I guess. So I started my first web shop selling Pokemon cards there. So Pokemon cards have been a huge part of pretty much my whole life.
Oh, we got to talk after.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's so cool,
Nice.
man.
Yeah.
I think I reached out to you about a yearish ago the first time. And this is a funny story because you have a lot of people impostoring you. And
Yeah.
so I reached out through email, and I remember so coincidentally, a few days later, an Instagram account called Eddie Moon with I don't know how many O's reached out to me. And I really thought it was you. And I was so surprised that you would reach out to me through Instagram instead of just replying to my email. And so obviously, a few days later, I found out, okay, it wasn't actually you. But how do you deal with so many people trying to imposter you?
You can't. Yeah, it's something that a lot of people in the financial space kind of deal with. Really sad because a lot of people do get scammed. It's the worst when someone messages me and said, "Hey, I sent you money to this account. Can I get it back?" And I'm like, "Dang, that wasn't me."
Yeah.
And so the best thing that I could do is kind of let people on my channel know, but there's so much you try to over communicate enough, but people can't keep up. And so yeah, now Instagram has or Meta has the subscription for the blue check mark. And so I just discovered that like a couple of weeks ago. And so now I have that blue check mark, and hopefully people don't fall for those scams.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have to verify yourself to get that blue check mark? Because I know on Twitter, for example, I think there's a lot of fake accounts that can get that blue check mark regardless.
Correct, you do. You kind of have to like take photos of your license, and there's like extra steps about your personal information. Yeah,
Mm, okay, it's scary, man, because I remember that account looked so real, like the pictures, and I believe the account actually even had more followers than your account, which was mind-boggling. Like how they do that. I guess they just buy followers.
they do. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but
Yeah.
I hope. Yeah, yeah.
So I found your channel, I think, about 2 years ago when I started getting into crypto myself, and I think there's a lot of people are starting to get into the crypto or at least getting to understand what crypto is. But for those still living under a rock, do you mind explaining what cryptocurrency is?
Yeah. So cryptocurrency, in its simplest form, is digital currency. In the end, any currency is built on trust, but primarily there's like the godfather of crypto, which is Bitcoin. It's decentralized, completely decentralized. No one owns it. No one can control it. No one has price. No one owns enough to move the market, if that makes sense. But there are other different types of cryptocurrency that are created from that. There are stable coins, altcoins, a lot of different coins, but these have some level of centralization. And so, yeah, that's pretty much the simplest way to explain it. It's
Yeah.
digital currency. Yeah,
Stable coins are the ones that follow a real currency, right?
correct. Stable coins are, it depends. There's a stable coin called USDC, and it's pegged to the dollar. Most stable coins should be pegged to the US dollar. So one stablecoin equals $1. So if you own 100 USDT or USDC, you should own $100. Yeah.
Mm. And so, what is the advantage to owning USDC instead of just the dollar?
It's faster to move. Yeah,
Oh.
it's people like to hold it onto either the ledger. I can send you USDC. It's most of the times it's untraceable as well, and so people do like that. Like for example, in the Pokemon space, people like to pay through cryptocurrency for tax evasion reasons, and that
Hmm.
is not okay, but people do it. And so there is, of course, the IRS doesn't like that, and they'll try to track you down. But that's one example. But yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
what is an altcoin? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, and a lot of times, a lot of the companies that sometimes a company you work for may want to pay you out in USDC, in stable coins instead, and so they'll do that as well. Yeah,
Mm.
but sorry, your question.
Yeah, I was just wondering, an altcoin, what classifies that?
Yeah, so an altcoin is pretty much a currency that is used either to power a certain network, or it's also used as a currency supporting that project's mission. The issue is that a lot of people treat altcoins more for trading than an investment. Very few altcoins you actually invest in long term. It's more for a trade and a quick flip, and you shouldn't really hold on to it for a long period of time unless you really believe in that specific project. The only problem is every project is trying to solve the same problem, which is how the simplest way is the simple question is how can you use cryptocurrency in an everyday use case as simple as possible for everyday people. Everyone's trying to figure that out, and everyone's saying they have the solution, and so it's kind of a matter of time. That's why just holding Bitcoin for me and what I recommend for most people who are getting in is the safest hold out of every coin.
Mm. And so, what do you look for when you look to invest in cryptocurrencies?
Primarily, the first is their founder. You want to look at their founder. Who's the founder? What do they believe in? The second one is how centralized is it? How decentralized is it? There are certain coins that are less decentralized than most, and some are very centralized. Ethereum, for example, is still centralized, but not as much as a coin like Matic, which is pretty centralized. And so you kind of have to figure that out and what you believe in. But most times, people think that you can invest into things like Dogecoin or Shiba Inu, and you could become a millionaire. And most people have, but most people have lost a lot of money. And to invest into something like that, I would recommend not doing, unless it's like 1% or less than a percent of your portfolio.
Mm.
Yeah.
Does all coins, for the most part, follow the Bitcoin? So if Bitcoin goes up, Bitcoin dips, most coins follow that pattern, right?
99% of the time, yes. There are some outliers where that specific altcoin will just go up. For example, in 2019 and 2020, there was, as the Bitcoin market was going down, there was an altcoin called Chainlink that was actually outperforming the entire market. That's because the project of Link was very attractive to a lot of investors. And so, because most altcoins are paired to Bitcoin, when Bitcoin goes down and it sells off, a lot of altcoins will sell off as well. And the reason why that sell off happens is not because of people selling out of fear, but it's really because the entire cryptocurrency market is a trader's market. And so a lot of people trade on leverage. And so when the market is being liquidated, a lot of people are just selling off out of their control. And so they're losing their positions. Therefore, the market is just crashing in that
Hmm.
sense. Yeah,
Interesting. And I believe Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency ever,
correct.
correct? Yeah. And how far up do you think crypto or Bitcoin will go?
Ooh, you know, um, there are like these crazy predictions on people saying like one day it'll reach $1 million per coin.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
there's a lot of stuff like that. I'm not a not believer of it. I do think it's possible. It's mathematically possible. The problem is, will people adapt Bitcoin? I think that's like the biggest question. And if majority of the world does, it can easily reach over 100K. 250 is very reasonable in that range. But it's kind of mind-boggling to think that it'll reach $1 million
Yeah.
per coin. But it's the same when Bitcoin was trading around $10 and people saying one day it'll hit 20K. That sounds
Yeah.
crazy, but it did. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So do you think that we will eventually, like, it will be very mainstream for people to actually use cryptocurrency on a daily basis to get groceries, for example? I mean, there are already people who do that, but I would say it's the minority of people, right?
Yes. As a believer of Bitcoin, I want to say yes. But practically, people are most comfortable using the US dollar in the world.
Mm,
That's kind of what a lot of international markets trade with, use. The US dollar is, so people think the US dollar is weak and it's dying, and it is, but it is still very strong. So if it does happen, I don't think it's going to happen in the next 10 years. I think it's going to take longer than that, unless the US government decides to peg the US dollar to Bitcoin. I don't know. If they use Bitcoin somehow into the entire system, then it's going to change everything. And then banks use Bitcoin. That'd be insane. The only problem is a lot of these bigger institutions and banks, or not necessarily banks, but institutions, don't want to have custody over their Bitcoin, because let's say the government owns a ton of Bitcoin. If they lose their seed phrase or their password or whatever they lose, they're going to lose it. It's
yeah.
going to be huge, and so it's a huge liability. So yeah, there's a lot of pros and cons, but most of it is due to custody issues when it comes to larger companies. But I hope that it does. But I don't know. I think it's still far away. Yeah.
But if the government starts taking over and banks start using cryptocurrency, doesn't it lose its decentralization in a way?
Yes, but because the Bitcoin, you have to think about it this way. Like the US may step in, but there are a ton of other countries that will step in. And the US may have a certain percentage over the entire market, but it would still be not enough to move the entire market. It just can't, it will not be possible. Unless they buy out the entire supply of Bitcoin, like the rest, but they don't have enough money. Where the US is in so much debt. And so there's just no way they're gonna, if they print dollars out of thin air to buy Bitcoin, it's gonna the inflation rate's going to increase like crazy. The value of the dollar is going to go down. So yeah, they most likely cannot and will not.
Hmm.
In my
In-
opinion, that's just my opinion.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so let's say I am brand new into investing. I've saved up some money and I want to get into investing. What is your advice for someone who wants to get started in that?
Okay, sorry, can you say it one more time?
Yeah, so let's say I want to get into investing. I want
Uh,
to start investing some money. I've saved up some money. How does one start? It can be crypto, it can be anything. What is your advice to get started?
yeah. My biggest advice is, so if you have like $1,000 or $10,000, I would say invest that first. If you're young, explore cryptocurrency. If you're a little bit older, stick with the stock market. Yeah, I would always encourage people to just invest in the stock market first. It's boring. The returns may not be as great, but it's a lot less volatile than crypto. Um, with the stock market, you may be able to stomach a 20% loss, but with crypto, can you stomach an 80% loss?
Mm.
That's rough, right? And so for me, it's like invest into the S&P 500, into the stock market, see how the market moves and understand that first. Once you understand that, you can start exploring other things like single stocks, ETFs. Once you're comfortable with that, then explore crypto. But if you want to do a little bit of both, 90% stock market, 10% cryptocurrency, that's really safe. Yeah,
Which one do you think is harder to get into? Is it crypto?
100%. Yeah. Um, I take that back. It depends on what you learn first. If you learn cryptocurrency first, then it's easier. If you learn stock market first, it's going to be easier. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Do you invest in NFTs?
I I have a few, but I'm not a huge believer in like investing into NFTs.
Mm.
Yeah,
How come?
I think it's just there's very little to no utility behind NFTs. I haven't seen anyone really use it correctly. Um, So until somebody does, then I may be a believer in it. Like if there was an NFT for Starbucks, where if you own that NFT, you get 3 free drinks every week.
Mm.
That's a really good utility. And if I no longer want to drink Starbucks, I can sell that NFT to somebody else, and they can get 3 free drinks every week. That may be pretty cool. So I think that's a really nice use case. But even then, um, I don't know how practical it will be for most people when they would rather just spend their dollars to earn points and just get free drinks that way. Yeah.
Yeah. I love what Gary Vee does, having the his NFTs V friends as tickets for the what is it called?
VCon.
VCon, right.
Yeah. Be
I
friends and
love
the,
the
I think it's
utility
VCon.
of
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's great. The only issue is that when an individual like Gary Vee has an NFT, the NFT's value is at the mercy of his reputation, of
Right.
his brand. And so if he doesn't do well, the NFT won't do well. If he passes away for some reason, the NFT will pretty much be worthless unless the company revives it somehow. So it's a little scary. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Interesting. Okay, so going back to the Starbucks example, so could that in theory, like you said, if you have an NFT that gives you free drinks every week, would you sell that as a person to someone else, or would you, as if you wanted that NFT, would you buy it from Starbucks or from someone else? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so basically, Starbucks would initially sell it first, and then we would have to mint it. So we would buy it from basically Starbucks, and then we hold on to it. And the value of that NFT depends on the demand of that NFT. If there is no demand for the Starbucks NFT, the value of it's going to go down. So Starbucks, and including Gary Vee and anyone who creates NFTs, has to be, they're basically a business. They have to think of models and ways to please the owners of the NFTs, and if they cannot, people will sell them. It's pretty brutal. When people sell NFTs, they think that, oh, I'm going to create an NFT, get rich off of it, and I'm done.
Mm,
But you have to keep going. Like people don't think about 2 years, 3 years, 10 years down the line, and it could be a burden in the end. Yeah, it could be one of those things where like if I created one, I'll be like, dang, what did I get myself into?
mm.
Like, was this the right decision? Yeah, I
Yeah.
could feel that way. Yeah.
Interesting. I I've heard a lot of people speculate that for real estate, for example, you will own an NFT as the official contract for owning a house. And what do you feel about? How do you feel about that?
Uh, I I've heard I haven't like thought about it too much to give it an opinion on it. I'll leave it there. I think it's still too early. So basically, you would own a like say I'm gonna purchase a home. I actually purchased a home moving in about a month. And
Congrats.
let's say that thank you. And let's say the contract is on the blockchain through an NFT. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. It's very like it'll be very public. First of all,
Yeah.
everyone will know. But at the same time, if I sell it, the person who I'm selling it to has to also understand what NFTs are,
Right.
right? Yeah. So um, there's pros and cons to that. It's the utility that's the biggest barrier right now between crypto and the real world. Like, how can we bridge those two? Uh, and that's what everyone's trying to solve. Yeah,
Right. I think once the metaverse comes around is probably when NFTs will become more mainstream.
mm,
Because as far as I understand, and I'm a complete amateur in this space, but as far as I understand, the items you will own in the metaverse will be NFTs.
correct.
So I
Yeah,
probably once metaverse starts coming around is when NFTs will start becoming more mainstream, and then perhaps at that point it will also start to become more mainstream in the real world with like using NFTs as concert tickets or as like the Starbucks example, for example.
yeah, that will be it. I think the one thing people have to understand is though, like when you purchase something, when you purchase an NFT, you maybe you paid $20 or $100 for that NFT. Let's say you paid $100 for like a sword item in a game, right? That sword item may go down in value to like $20. It could. That's the thing. And the person who owns it is going to sell it at $20. So there is like that trading aspect as well with NFTs. And then so the utility has to be so strong that people are going to be willing to hold it instead of selling it.
Mm,
Because as people keep selling it, the floor price is going to go lower and lower and lower. And the entire NFT market of that whatever metaverse is going to be very low. And so, yeah, utility is always going to be the number one. How can that entity serve that person? As long as most companies or creators can figure that out, that NFT will be very successful. Yeah.
mm. So interesting. I wish I was so much smarter on this space.
No, no, you got the right idea on everything though, and I think people like me too. I'm still trying to understand this space. Like I have NFTs of like game characters, and to understand what this is about, and
Mm,
so I bought a game character at a certain price, and now it's dropped a certain price. But I like playing the game, because what I paid for was the strength of that character, and so I'm
mm,
able to win more games because of that character. Maybe when the NFT market goes back up, maybe I can sell that character for a much higher price. But right now, the entire market's down, and so I'm just holding on to it. Yeah.
mm. I like the idea of using it. Wow, my throat. I like the idea of using NFTs in video games. I used to play a lot of CSGO, Counter Strike Global Offensive, where essentially you buy these virtual items, these virtual skins for your guns. And the problem with that is you can only use them in that game.
Mm.
But with NFTs, you have the potential to transfer those items into other games as well.
That I don't know too much about. Possibly, but I don't know. I don't know. Yeah.
If the
Yeah.
games implement them, of course, like
There we go.
implement the
Yeah. That.
different
Yeah. Yeah.
NFTs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm. Correct.
I was wondering if you could help me understand the FTX scandal.
Ooh. uh. So FTX is a very, very big cryptocurrency exchange company. They were very legit. They even had their own stadium at Florida. And I think the simplest way I can put it is that Sam Bankman Fried used customers' funds to make very risky trades. And essentially, he says, we're okay. We have this is how much funds we have. But in reality, they were very low on funds. So the issue was that number one, customers who had the app who owned funds within FTX, their funds were really not their own. And that's the cost of centralization. When you don't own your keys to your wallet, you don't really own your cryptocurrency. And so I used FTX. FTX was a sponsor of my channel and a lot of creators too. And we really thought and we really believed in FTX as well. But once things started to get shaky, I pulled all my funds out. I didn't lose any money, thankfully. but I felt really bad too at the same time because I know a lot of creators, and including myself, we felt really bad because we promoted a platform where we thought was legit, but then there was just really good liars in it in the company. And yeah, Sam Bankman-Fried, he was branded as like like a young genius, a very giving person, and we all fell into it. And unfortunately, a lot of people have lost funds. And yeah, that's the biggest issue. The biggest, I guess, takeaway. They
Mm.
traded with customer funds, and they lost money. Yeah.
So, how do they make money from? I give them money to invest for me, right? That's how it
Mhm.
works. How do they make money from that if they invested in risky funds that essentially lose the money?
Correct. So actually, like 99%, like majority of the cryptocurrency exchanges, they make money off of the trading fees. So like Coinbase,
Mm.
if you buy like $100 worth of Bitcoin, there's like a $3 fee or something like that. That's how they make money. But you can imagine if there's like hundreds and thousands of transactions every single day, they're making thousands on just the fees alone. And so that's how people, companies like FTX, Coinbase, Gemini, like a lot of the bigger exchanges make money. Um, the issue is that people, we want to believe, like companies like Coinbase, they say that whatever we purchase, they purchase that crypto and put it in cold storage. That means that they keep it safe. FTX also kind of claimed the same thing, and so we believe that when we buy funds from FTX, it was safe. But what really was happening was they took our funds and they were trading on leverage very irresponsibly. Yeah.
Hmm. So they seemed super legit in the beginning, and when was kind of that tipping point where people started to realize something's wrong here?
Uh, it's usually through Twitter. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just like people messaging and saying, "Be careful." Like you just see like little warning signs here and there. The moment you kind of see those, you run. Yeah, as
Hmm.
quick as possible. Yeah. But
S-
that was the biggest that was like the starting point for me personally.
Yeah. I think a lot of people lost trust in cryptocurrency as a whole because of that entire scandal, which is a shame.
Yeah. This bull market or this cycle of the market, I believe is probably a lot of people have lost the most money. It's also a lot of people have been hurt as well from the market, and it's going to be very difficult for the entire market, crypto asset class, to recover from this. And so we're kind of experiencing a very like sideways market right now, but at the same time, it's going to come back. Yeah, it always has and it always will. So
Hmm.
I'm excited for the next run. Yeah.
What are some of the things that people should look out for when they try to invest with someone like FTX, for example?
Yeah, when you purchase cryptocurrencies through an exchange like FTX or Coinbase, um, it's okay to purchase, but as soon as you purchase it, transfer it to a cold wallet or a hardware wallet where you have access to your own keys and seed phrases. There is a learning curve to that, so go on YouTube and do your due diligence. If you cannot do that or not willing to do that, I would say don't even invest into cryptocurrency.
Mm.
There is a learning curve to this, and you have to commit your hours and time to learn about this technology. But it can be very rewarding if you do. Yeah.
Can you explain the difference between a cold wallet and a hard wallet, it's called?
Yeah, so there are different types. There's the correct term is cold wallet and hot wallet. Hot wallet is anything that is basically online. What is it? MetaMask is a hot wallet. Um, Sorry, I take that back. It's been a while since I've explained this. A hot wallet is basically anytime your funds are on an exchange. Let's keep it that. That's the simplest way to put it. Cold wallets are anytime it's off the exchanges, which is also a hard wallet. I think I may have one. Here we go. Yeah. So this is a ledger, and basically this is where my funds are kept in here. And so no hackers can hack it. If you try to hack my wallet, you can't access it. But if it's online or in a hot wallet, it is possible for someone to hack it. Now, you should have your own seed phrases, which is anywhere between 12 to 18 words that you are given. That's kind of like your passcode to enter into your wallet. As long as you own that, no one else can access your funds.
Mm. And the ledger is by far the safest place to store
It
cryptocurrency, right?
is as of right now, yes.
Yeah.
I think there was like recent news on some breach on Ledger, but I have to look more into that. Yeah, I
Oh
haven't
wow.
looked into that. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So it's still being developed. The entire space is still being developed. Yeah,
Yeah. You dance.
I do. Yes.
Very smooth transition. Is it what is the style called?
Specifically like hip hop. Like hip
Hip
hop
hop.
choreography is like the best way I can describe it. Yep.
It's super interesting. There's a bit of breakdance in it as well, no?
Yeah, that was like my background. That's what I started. That was breaking was my style, the style that I grew up with. And then I started a team at the age of 20, and then I've been directing that team since.
That's awesome, man. How did you get started with dancing?
Oh, the short form is that my closest friend, we used to work out, but one day he was like, "Hey, let's go dance," and I was like, "I don't want to go dance," but he was like, "Oh, but it's a really good workout." And I was like, "All right, let's go." He taught me a few moves, and I fell in love with it ever since then. We practiced and danced every day in high school, and yeah, that's how I started, and then joined a few teams here and there. Learned about teams and how to run a team, and so, when you're 20, like it's still pretty young. Like if I look back now, I had no idea what I was doing.
Mm.
But I'm still glad the team is still around and we're still here.
That's so cool, man. Yeah, you must have developed leadership qualities that can be transferred to your other stuff in life from that. You do so many nice and awesome things, man. There's so much to dive into.
Thank you. It's life's short, so you want to do as much as possible in the shortest time you can and have no regrets when you get older. So
How do you find time to do all your passions?
you know, if you love the things you do and you love what you do, you will make time somehow. Yeah, I mean, when my wife and I before we got married, I would figure out ways to make time to go eat together and like, stuff like that. Um there is a thing that I did commit to when I turned 20. I said from the age 20, so I'm 31 right now, turning 32 this year. I've told myself from the age of when I turned 20, I said from 20 to 30, I will try anything and everything. I'm going to sacrifice this body and my time, and I'm not going to hang out. I'm not going to do anything dumb. I'm just gonna work and I'm just gonna try to build the biggest plate in the world. And so I did. I tried to build the widest plate. I failed at a lot of things. But then at the age of 30, I'm gonna start taking stuff out of those plates and start building them up. And so I've quit a lot of things actually once I turned 30, and just doing a few things, but doing them well. And from
Mhm.
the age 30 to 40, I've committed to just build those things. And from age 40 and up, just to give and teach as much as I can. So I'm in that building process now. I feel like I'm still in my prime and I have a lot to do. Yeah.
That's so awesome, man. I feel like I am on the exact same path. I am 24, soon 25,
There you go.
and
So
I've also just dedicated my 20s to try a lot of new things and become really smart and skilled. And then in my 30s, use those skills that I've and and the knowledge that I've gained to try and build something from there. That's awesome to hear. Did you
yes.
ever suffer from FOMO at all?
Never. The only one time you know what? Okay, I take that back. The only one, there are a few, but not that I can remember because I knew what I was doing. Like I knew the path I was going on. I have like a different backstory and reason why I function the way that I do.
Mm-hmm.
But the one time was when my graduating class was graduating because I skipped 2 years of college to just try different things. And so I graduated college 2 years later. So I felt behind. Yeah, when I saw all my friends graduate. That's
Mm,
the only time I felt FOMO. But at the same time, that drove me even harder to be like, dang, I'm going to work just as hard and be ahead on top by the time I graduate. So I never wanted to go to school. I only went because my mom really wanted me to go, so I wanted to honor her.
mm,
But after I graduated, I didn't do anything related to my major, and I just did my own thing. Yeah,
yeah. That's awesome, man. I feel like one of the biggest challenges for young people in their 20s is definitely that FOMO, especially because of social media nowadays where you
yeah,
everything is right there. You see what your friends are doing on your phone. Um, yeah, I think that's a huge roadblock for people that they have to overcome if they want to do something um, extra, I suppose.
It is, especially like you mentioned it. This generation is the most overstimulated generation when it comes to like information and content, especially short form content on Instagram, YouTube Shorts. It's crazy, yeah, right now.
Yeah. I have a really hard time trying to manage my time. Perhaps you could give me some relationship advice since you seem to be doing well.
Like, are you dating right now?
I am not. And the reason
Okay.
I am not is exactly because I've tried to devote my 20s to becoming smart and skilled. And so I've had a really hard time figuring out how I make space for that.
Mm. So this kind of will bleed into the thing that I'll share now is going to tie into my religious beliefs. So I'm a Christian. And so for me, it's never been about time management. I don't actually believe in time management. I think you could manage your time to its certain limits. For me, it's always been a priority management. And so for me, I've always there's four levels that I've prioritized. First is being my relationship with God being first, and then family being second, and then my like friends and community and ministries that I'm a part of third, and then fourth was my work. So work has always been last. I do spend the most amount of time in my work though, but that doesn't mean it's my priority. The
Mm,
same like exactly for the very reason once my son was born, I had to let go of YouTube for a bit. I was like, I want to create YouTube videos, but at this time, I'm going to prioritize family. And so, in that sense, I would say, I don't know if you're a Christian or not, but what for me, my relationship with God has really rooted my foundation in like how to live my life. And so, thinking about family has always been a big part of my life. Like, who am I going to marry? Who am I going to date? Like, those are things that I thought about growing up. And every time I had an interest in a girl, I had to ask myself, like, is this someone that I can see the mother of my future children? Because I wanted kids. Is this somebody who will, not cheat on me or not be angry at me or will not abuse me? And as long as they didn't do those, no red flags were there. That's how I found my wife, and so she was my first and my only girlfriend, and we got married. Yeah, so there were a lot of girls that I've got interested in and like was curious about, but then if it didn't line up with my values, it was a no go for me. So
mm.
yeah,
How long have you been together?
so we dated for like 7 years before we got married, and we've married 4 years now. Yeah, 4 years.
That's amazing. Congrats, man. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, religion is really interesting to me. I am not religious. I don't not believe in God or any religion. I mean, I think anything can be possible. So I am not. Is it agnostic? People who really don't believe in it.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not that. I do think it is completely possible that God could exist.
Mm.
But walk me through how have you always been religious?
Yeah, so I grew up in a Christian household. My dad was a Buddhist, though. My mom was a Christian, so there was a lot of tension in the house. Actually, my mom would sneak me out to church, but I didn't really accept Christ. There's a difference between attending church and being a disciple of Christ. And so
Mm.
for me, I didn't really commit my life to Christ until I was 15 in high school, and so it's been like a 16-year journey. Um, Sorry, what was your question?
I
Oh,
asked
yeah, that
if
was that
it.
was a question. Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
question. Yeah. Sorry.
How do you feel like religion has helped you in your life?
Yeah, for Christians, we believe that there is only one true God and there's only one absolute truth. There are so many different truths out in this world of what people think is truth. But we believe that God has set the foundation of what truth is through the word of God, which is the Bible. And so for me, the way that it's shaped me is how to live out my life, my character, how to manage money, how to manage my time, how to manage my relationships with people, how to love on others and forgive others, how to withhold my tongue and not get angry, how to be loved, have peace, be patient, and be kind to others. Like a lot of these traits and characters and how to live life really came from the Bible. And so for me, my parents got divorced when I was young. And so that really kind of like detached my relationship with like a dad. And so understanding God was my father, that
Mm,
really, I always like to say God is the one who raised me. And yeah, it's really helped me kind of become the person who I am today. Things like the reason why I never really dealt with FOMO is because a lot of my friends went out to go drink and party and do drugs at early college. You know, that's very normal for a lot of young college students. But for me, as a Christian, like I knew that those are things that I shouldn't do. So I've never drank. I've never smoked. I've never done any drugs. And I feel like, not to say that people who do those things will fail in life, because that's not necessarily true. But a lot of those things, because I didn't do them, I do believe that I am where I am today because of those things. Being very careful about my identity. Like I know who I am in Christ. And so just because I didn't get invited to this hangout doesn't define my identity. Just because I didn't do this thing doesn't define my identity. I know who I am in Christ. And so a lot of my identity and who I am and my character really um, was founded by God. Yeah, that's kind of what I believe in. So yeah, hope that answered
yeah.
your question. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, I love that a religion can do that, and I do see that there are very comforting things about being religious. Um, I don't want to be disrespectful, and tell me if I go out of line.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah.
But I feel like some of the things that some religions teach you, at least, like being kind to others, are kind of duh ish. Like, be kind to others. Yes, of course. Why do I really need a religion for that? Like, it just makes sense to be kind to others, be kind to yourself.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
kindness in Christianity is like a must, right? It's like you should think of it as like a giant flower petal. It's just one part of the petal. Like it's just one part of who we should be as Christians.
Mm,
I think the biggest difference between Christianity and most is that one, Jesus was the only person who was also God that died for mankind, whereas most didn't. And so there's a different level of sacrificial love within Christianity. And at the same time, he rose from the dead in 3 days. And most other religion leaders did not come back to life after 3 days. And so for us as Christians, we do believe that, it's not necessarily about scoring points. It's not about, oh, I was kind like 10 times, so I get 10 points. It's not about that. It's about doing our best to represent Christ every day, but then knowing that after we die, it's not we're not gonna die and just go into like a black hole. We're gonna be with Christ again, and we're gonna have new bodies, and we're gonna have be reunited with Christ. And so there's that's like the biggest difference. But I think yeah, sacrificial love is definitely the biggest one, and forgiving others is hard for most people. But in the Christian walk, we are commanded to forgive others, even our enemies.
mm. Even though I'm not religious, I think it is unbelievably fascinating. And I have a hard time, though, trying to believe in something that there is so little evidence for.
Mm.
Is there anything in your mind that in Christianity that stands out that has some evidence to back up all of this?
Yeah, so this is where like faith comes in. This is the hardest part about Christianity. It's actually believing um, what is actually not there. Historically, Jesus was a real person. Historically, Jesus died and did the things he did. People try to use science to, you know, uh, what do you call it, cancel out what Jesus did in life. And so that's something that we have no control over. Like we can argue as much as we want, but it's not going to do anything. So we believe that the word of God is true. And so the only evidence we really have is the Bible, and we believe everything that it says. It's the same thing as like you feel wind, you don't really see wind, but you feel wind. You know it exists, but you can't see it. And that's what Christianity is. You know God is there, you see wind moves trees, and so you know it's actually working. And so we do see God working in every day in people's lives, and so that's like the evidence we have. Like I have a guy who a year ago I decided to take him under as like my disciple in that sense. Like I have no idea who he was. Like I met him for the first time. We met at Starbucks. We talked, and I was like, hey, like I want to mentor you. And so he was not a Christian, but then I shared the gospel with him, and for an entire year, every time we met, I asked him, "Are you ready to accept Christ?" And he said no, no, every time. He's like, he's not ready. But for some crazy reason, like 2 months ago, he called me and he was like, I'm ready to accept Christ. And
Wow.
so to me, that's a miracle on its own. And like for someone who denied Christ and didn't want to do anything with Christianity to all of a sudden accept Christ, that I know God is real. For God to transform me from the person I used to be to who I am now, God is real. So that's like the evidence we see in everyday lives of people who they once used to be, and then deciding to die to their old selves, so that they can be a new, reborn in Christ in that sense, and live out a Christ-like life. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. So you met a random guy at Starbucks, completely random.
Oh, so we met before. Yeah, we met
Ah, okay.
before. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I was like, "Hey, let's meet up at Starbucks." And so that was our second time meeting. Yeah,
Ah, okay.
yeah, yeah.
No, I bet there are some people that would go to Starbucks randomly and just try to convince people to convert into their religion.
There is that part too. That's like the unattractive part about Christianity, of
Yeah.
people just like going in front of people's faces and being like, "Hey, do you know Jesus?" And that's okay. It's better that they're doing that than not. But the way that Jesus did it was he went door to door. He built relationships with people first, and then people found out who he was, and then they had questions about Jesus, like who are you? What do you do? And then Jesus then would teach. As long as people have open hearts and hearts to receive, those are the people who accepted Christ. Yeah, yeah.
So when we die, we go to heaven, and what happens in heaven?
What happens? So this is the scary part and like the best part. We live forever. That part is hecka scary for our human bodies cannot comprehend living forever.
No, yeah.
That to me does sound scary a little bit, but at the same time, it's in heaven we are worshiping God for eternity. In terms of like what we are doing and all that stuff, I have no clue.
No.
There's no, if people are saying, people think that we're going to eat like good food and we're not. I mean, yes, we're not going to be sick. All sickness is going to be gone. All sort of sin and sadness and all that stuff, despair is all going to be gone. In terms of we believe that, and in terms of like what we'll be doing on an everyday basis, I have no clue.
Mm.
But that is where our finite minds cannot comprehend eternity, and that is something that we're gonna understand once we die.
Yeah. So what qualifies you to go to heaven versus going to hell according to Christianity?
Yeah, it's believing that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, that He came down and died for your sins, and that He resurrected in 3 days, and that He loves you and He forgives you. And as long as you believe that and understand that, you now belong in the family of Christ. It's a very simple concept, not a concept, it's a very simple truth, but it's very hard for people to grasp that. Is that all I have to do? Just believe in Jesus? And
Mm.
it's yes. That's the easy part. The hard part is actually living out a life like Christ. And so that's where a lot of like bad news and reputations come out from Christians, because people will claim that they're Christians, but their characters and behaviors don't reflect that of Christ. And so that's the hardest part. Yeah, that is the hardest part.
I love people who have crosses tattooed on their bodies. You can't have tattoos, right, in Christianity.
There are a lot of there's that's a debate. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. There's no. I believe that you can have tattoos as a Christian. You can, um, but if that tattoo, like if I had a tattoo on my, I don't have any tattoos, but let's say you were a Christian and I had a tattoo on my arm right here, and if that hindered you and that made you very uncomfortable, I would do everything in my power to cover it and not reveal it to you. Because if that
Mhm.
makes you stumble and makes you feel uncomfortable, that as a brother is doing a disservice to you. And so, yeah, just because I have a tattoo does not mean I'm going to go to hell. I will, but if it's gonna make someone stumble or make feel someone uncomfortable, then no, do not. Same reason. Like Christians can drink, they can drink. The borderline is when they start getting drunk and they start having no control over their mind and their body. That is not okay. But if I don't drink, and there used to be a phase in my life where I felt very uncomfortable when others drank around me. So my friends would actually not drink around me for a very good reason, and so I was very thankful for that. But now I don't mind it too much. I understand it, but I prefer that. Like if I had to make a choice, I wish all Christians didn't drink. But at the
Mm.
same time, yeah, that's just my opinion though. I feel like drinking causes more harm than not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it'll
Yeah,
always
I definitely
go.
believe that too. Yeah,
Yeah,
like from a health standpoint, obviously
100%.
drinking is
Yeah,
is not good, yeah, either.
yeah.
Okay, so as a Christian, do you are you allowed, let's say that, to do something bad and then ask Christ for forgiveness and then you still go to heaven?
Yes. It's not like so Catholics. That sounds more what like Catholics do. Like they'll sin, they'll go to the church, to the Father, ask for forgiveness. The Father says you are forgiven, and they go do their everyday lives. And they
Mm,
think that as long as they're forgiven, it kind of like cancels out their sins. As a Christian, we understand that even as a Christian, we will continue to fall and we will continue to sin. But it is a continual process of becoming more like Christ, the heart that matters to Christ. And so Christ will understand, yes, as our flesh, like our spirit wants to not sin, but our flesh is so weak and will sin. And there is grace and forgiveness in that. Now the problem becomes where when a Christian does not repent of that sin. If it's a habitual sin that they continuously go into time and time again, then they are abusing God's grace and God's forgiveness. And that's another question of, is this person really a Christian? Does this person really understand the gospel and what Christ has done? Because if they really did, then they would truly repent and turn away from their sins. So there's that aspect, yeah.
mm, interesting, man. Eddie, thank you so much for coming on, man. This was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Let everybody know where they can find your work.
Yeah, you can type Eddie Moon, EDDIEMOON, on YouTube or Instagram, and I'll be there.
Awesome. Thank you, man. This was
Cool.
great.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the podcast with Eddie Moon. If you have not already, can I humbly ask you to subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already? I said that twice. It's okay. Please subscribe. It helps me out so much more than you realize. It is almost effortless for you, and it makes sure that if you subscribe, you will be notified whenever we post a new episode of the podcast, which I try to always make sure that these episodes are as valuable as possible for you to consume so that you leave having listened or having watched, gaining something, some knowledge, some wisdom of any kind. So if you want to be smarter, self develop along with me, hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much. Until next time, peace.